Hi again. So this is part two of the video. The last one was on a strong example, and now we're going to talk just a little bit about the paragraph structure of the response before moving into an overview of the rubric. So just to kind of, because we've spent some time on how to organize a summary and the way to connect ideas, I just did want to give a few more thoughts on the organization of the response paragraph, since it is a bit different. So this is a quote from They Say, I Say, which is a kind of a seminal text on writing composition. And I really like how this explains why it is we need to summarize ideas before responding to them. And we've already kind of talked about this in relation to the conversation metaphor, but I think this puts it quite nicely. So the underlying structure of academic writing and of responsible public discourse, so responsible public conversations, resides not in just stating our own ideas, but in listening closely to others around us, summarizing their views in a way that they will recognize, and responding with our own ideas in kind. Broadly speaking, academic writing is argumentative writing, and we believe that to argue well, you need to do more than assert your own ideas. You need to enter a conversation using what others say or might say as a launching pad or sounding board for your own ideas. And I think that this is nice because it kind of helps us understand both the structure of the response paragraph and why it helps to structure it this way, but also why we're starting our assignment with a summary to begin with, right? So that we're grounding our response in what others have said first, okay? So just to kind of give you an example, because the structure of the response paragraph is one that really allows readers to follow it with ease, right? So it's one that allows them to be given the information in an order that they are going to be able to understand. And it's one that we see in lots of different kinds of academic writing. So using and kind of learning this structure, I think, will be helpful in a lot of other writing contexts for you, particularly at the university, but potentially in other contexts as well. So just to kind of show you, in the letter from Birmingham jail, we have an example of this kind of structure, though it might be a little bit different. It might be a little bit different. You see the way in which the author is first identifying a point that has been made, stating his response, and then explaining that response, right? So he says, you deplore the demonstrations taking place in Birmingham, identifying some of his readers' beliefs or thoughts. But your statement, I am sorry to say, fails to express a similar concern for the conditions that brought about the demonstrations. I am sure that none of you would want to rest content with a superficial kind of social analysis that deals merely with effects and does not grapple with causes. I'm not going to go on, but you can kind of see here how he starts with what others have said, responding to, this is how I am reacting to it, and then moving into his own explanation of feeling that way, right? Which in this case is going to be reflective. It's going to be something based on your own experience that you've interacted with. And then I think, just to formalize this a little bit, and you might want to take notes here, you might want to pause and just take down some quick notes. You can actually kind of break this structure down, and I think this is going to be the best one because it has a nice little acronym associated with it. So the acronym is TRIAC. Again, you don't always have to follow this structure, but the simple logic of how it's laid out for academic writing really does help your reader follow you in a way that they understand what it is you're saying. So starting off with a topic sentence that paraphrases the main idea, that you are responding to, and kind of giving them a sense that you are going to respond to an idea, right? So I've summarized, and now I'm moving into one of the ideas that I disagreed with from Susan Cain's TED Talk was X, right? So that's just a basic sentence that really gives the reader a sense of what it is you're going to talk about. These two can be switched, I think. So then you want to really introduce that idea in the form of a quote, and you might contextualize it, by giving your reader a sense of where that quote is coming from. And there's some great examples of this in conversation. And then also, after giving that quote, really making sure it's clear to the reader what the author is attempting to do there, right? So that the reader leaves, before you even begin to respond, your reader has a sense of what was happening here, right? And then once you've done all of those things, and we just looked at this in the example paragraph, you're moving into your own response. It doesn't necessarily have to be agree or disagree. We have some more nuanced explanations in there, and talking about what experiences in your life have made you feel that way, concluding by tying it back to the idea that this is how you are responding to the author's text, right? So the thesis that you're always tying it back to is, this is my take on the text, and whatever that take is. Okay, so we're going to move on now to the rubric. And my hope is that all of this should feel very familiar, right? And if there's anything that doesn't, it's going to be important that you let me know, right? Because this is how I'm going to be assessing the work. And one thing that I want to draw your attention to is the fact that we kind of grade based on a hierarchy, right? So the stuff up here is going to be like the first 3 rows or so are going to be more important than some of the stuff as we see if I can figure out as we move down, right? And I'm just going to go through this quickly and try to make some quick connections. And then if we have any questions in class on Tuesday, we can cover them. So the most important thing is, are you meeting the purpose of the assignment? So the introduction includes an accurate summary of the original article, which identifies the thesis reasons and some relevant evidence, right? So the main thing is that you're able to identify the argument, and you're able to identify some of the supporting ideas, as well as potentially differentiating between evidence and reasons. And the summary appropriately achieves the purpose of preparing audience members to understand the response and to focus the reflection. The summary includes all appropriate publication information, keeping in mind an audience of readers unfamiliar with the article, right? So things that we've been talking about for a week or so now. Moving into the response meets the purpose of the assignment by reflecting critically on how the text and personal experiences relate, right? So your reader should be able to see the connection between the ideas that you are presenting as your own and the ideas in the text, right? There should be a critical connection there. And then the writer makes an original point to help the audience understand the so what factor of the reflective response, right? So this means that your thesis is very clearly stated before you kind of begin to identify the nuances of the text that you are responding to. All evidence used from the text and from personal experiences ultimately connect to that focus thesis, right? So if your focus thesis is, I generally agreed with everything in this text, you want to make sure that all of your examples tie into that. If it's a little bit more complicated than that, that's fine. You just want to make sure that your thesis clearly kind of gives your reader an overview of what it is you're going to talk about, so that everything ultimately lines up, right? And there isn't any confusion. So those are the kind of like the bigger picture requirements. And then moving down, things that are maybe not quite as weighted, but are still important. This is when we kind of move into development. So the response offers specific examples from personal experience and explains why they matter to the audience. So you aren't just pulling examples from your experience and kind of leaving them there, but you're explaining their importance and why they matter and how they've impacted you. In much the same way, the response brings in specific examples from the text and demonstrates a clear connection to the personal experience, right? So you're not only, this is where we talked about having the quote and not just leaving it there, for your reader to figure out. You're drawing connections so that your reader understands why it is you are using the quotes and paraphrases that you use. The reflective response includes quotes or paraphrases from the original text that are appropriately integrated to help the audience contextualize the evidence. Quotes and paraphrases are consistently integrated with author tags. So attribution is going to still be really important, that you're using author tags consistently. The response includes careful consideration of audience's needs by organizing information in a logical way, right? So this is where TRIAC is going to be helpful because it allows your reader to understand what it is you're responding to before you respond to it. Transitions help the audience follow ideas and understand connections, and we looked at some examples of that in our strong example. The response meets genre conventions through placement of the summary early in the essay, the use of first-person narrative in the response, and inclusion of specific personal experiences and thoughtful reflection of those experiences, right? So you are, again, kind of thinking really intentionally about how you organize the body of your paper. And then the final piece, and this is something that while I'm not going to be focusing on it quite as much in grading, if there are huge errors here, ultimately these things kind of affect the upper level criteria. So the essay follows MLA formatting and citation standards and is carefully proofread for grammar, punctuation, and spelling. And I think that I am going to give you an example of what a properly formatted paper is, but in general, this shouldn't be your main focus, right? Because this isn't where I'm going to be focusing most of my attention. It's going to be on these upper level skills that we've been working on since day one. So this is what I'm going to be looking at. So I would really kind of take some time with this and make sure that everything makes sense. If there's anything that doesn't, I will be holding office hours 10 to 2 on Monday. And all you have to do is click on that link in modules and you're there in the waiting room. So really consider taking the time to stop by or make a trip to the Writing Center. Otherwise, I will see you all on Tuesday. Once again, your peer review rough drafts are not going to be due until Tuesday at midnight, so really take some time and focus on the readings and getting a head start on your rough draft. All right, see you all in class on Tuesday.